Now you're very welcome back to another Clare Echo video special, and today we're joined by two men that were towering presences on the field of play when they were in action. We've Darach Honan, formerly of Clonlara and Clare, and Nicholas Rynne, currently of the Limona Club, and a man that won a fine collection of medals during his hurling days over in the UK. So gentlemen, you're very welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Páraic.
Thanks, Páraic.
We'll start off, Darach. We'll go to yourself. Obviously, Clare recording a good win at the weekend over Waterford. For you, what were the standout aspects from Clare's performance?
Yeah, it was a great win, really good performance, and there was a lot of things you could pick out that went well for us. Such was the dominance that Clare had on the game. But I suppose our half-back line gave us a great platform from the start of the game, and John in particular, who I suppose there was a lot of talk about John's positioning at 6, and he had a really good game. It appeared at times as though Waterford were nearly passing him the ball and looking to actually pick him out, because every delivery from their half-back line midfield in the first half seemed to find him. So that was probably the platform for Clare's dominance, was that half-back line display, and Ryan did really well on one side and Páraic did well on the other. So I think that was the most striking feature of the Clare performance.
Okay. And Nicholas, obviously, as someone who was in Thurles at the weekend covering the game for Radio Kirkbashkin, you might be able to let us know, for the people that weren't there, were there aspects that they may not have seen on the field of play, say when they were sitting at home on their television? And I'm not talking about the new shoes that you were sporting in Thurles.
Thanks to new shoes, I got them in Clare. I suppose it's a different when you're at the game. Like, I was up near you, Páraic, that we had a great position. We were up high up in the stand, and then we were looking down onto the field. Like, and for me, everything that Darach said there was 100%. Like, John Conlon especially. But for me, the running that you could see off the ball, especially from Ryan Taylor, he covered an awful lot of ground. He covered back. He tackled. He cut off ball as well. And Carl Malone came back as well, and he did an awful lot. He's a real workhorse too, and he covered back. And I thought Ian Galvin, he scored 1 point from play, but the running he did, he covered every inch of that ground. He was back in the backs. He followed me in. He went right down the field. One time he made a superb run down one of the Waterford guys. I'm not sure who was a column lines of one of them, but he just tracked him all the way, and it ended up take the Waterford men lost the ball. Like, it's that kind of work rate. I'm not sure if you saw it on television, but that's what I picked out as the outstanding feature of this Clare team as opposed to last year. They were really all willing to work, and those guys that I mentioned, we saw the standout players: Tony Kelly, Ed McCarthy, John Conlon. But the guys that did the work, then you need those workers, those guys that were willing to do the running really. And Waterford never really got into that straight.
Yeah. I
think what was obvious too was that Tony Kelly was positioned. He really unsettled the Waterford. I don't know why Waterford insist on going with the same game plan for the last 5-6 years, and that's to play the centre back, just to be tied to work. Daily, he was like an unemployed man there, heading for the door office last Sunday, because he just didn't get any work to do, because Clare knew the Waterford game plan. They put Tony Kelly, that tied up Colin Lyons, who normally loves to come forward, and he never got a chance to go up the field and set up those Waterford attacks. So the 2 men full forward line, it was quite obvious. That really worked as well. And Colin Galvin was drifting the whole time and picking up and sending lovely ball into Tony Kelly, which was really setting the platform for Clare.
It was interesting to see Waterford's structure, because last year I felt as though they improved things and they had more of a presence, especially in the half-forward line. But they looked almost like the way Wexford set up, whereby they pulled way back the field, and almost like a basketball game where you all defend and then you break out together and try and run the ball up. But such was the work rate of particularly our half-forward line, and Nicholas has mentioned Ryan and Ian, and I thought they were really good, but their work rate allowed our half-back line to hold their position. and our defence to stay compact, and it didn't, and they were able to stop the Waterford creating overlaps and running from deep, and as a result, then we were able to sit back, and when they were forcing a clearance, the lads were able to mop it up, and that example that you've highlighted there, that stuck out to me as well, Nicholas, where Ian tracked, and I think it was Callum Lyons, probably a 50-yard run. And eventually he just ran into one of our halfbacks who took the ball off him easily, and we were able to hit a good ball back in. So that work rate from the half-forward line and midfielders, and Colin Galvin and Ian Galvin and Ryan Taylor, was a huge positive for Clare, and it allowed us to keep a constant structure at the back.
And on the structure, Darach, like Brian Lohan and the management team, Ken Ralph, James Moore and Sean Tracy, do you think they got it right as they have got it, as they did against Waterford, like the likes of Paddy Fitz, their towering presence to maybe limit the supply going into Desi Hutchinson?
Yeah, I think like Brian and the lads have to get huge kudos, really, because like, I mean, Cahill would have been seen as obviously a really, really good manager, and they would have got the better of the lads tactically. I think that staying compact at the back was a huge feature of that, and their inside forwards, who they have very dangerous inside forwards, Desi Hutchinson, and last year he had an ocean of space below in Páraic, and it was very hard for Rory Hayes to mark him. But this time, any ball that was coming in to the full forward line, you generally had John or Diarmuid or Páraic was coming back as a secondary defender, and if Hayes or any of the full-backs were able to just break the ball, we mopped it up more often than not. So that structure, holding that compact was crucial. And like we said, that our half forwards and our midfielders kind of allowed us to do that with their work rate. But sometimes you can, if you're working back the field like that, you don't have as much of a threat inside, and the positioning of Tony inside really made up for that. He was able, himself and Shanahan were able to win the ball even if they were outnumbered at times, and always a scoring threat, such as the quality of their play.
Nicholas, to coach yourself on Waterford, were you surprised with maybe how poor they were on the day?
Yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised that they went with the same game plan, you know. And as I mentioned the other day, he's a fine hurler, but I don't think he's a sweeper. And his role, he was totally bypassed. Clare had two options on Sunday. They went two ways. They went long into Tony Kelly and Alan Shanahan, but then they were popping pints over from long range. Okay, there was a lot of wides. But that's part of the game you play when you go for this. It's part and parcel of it. You'll get 40 shots off and you'll score 18 of them maybe. It seems to be the way the modern game is going. But our half backline, our full backline were immense on Sunday, and they stopped Waterford in their tracks very early on, and with the lads tracking back as well. Waterford just didn't seem to have anywhere to go. But they never changed their tactic. They just seemed to stick with that game for so long. They didn't get the running game going until very late in the game when Clare was starting to turn a bit. But they had woeful wides. We had bad wides, but Waterford really at vital times when they seemed to be getting a little bit back into the game, they had very poor wides, very poor finishing. And I think they were totally unsettled by Clare, and I think Brian Lohan and the lads deserve huge credit for that. Our physicality, John Conlon is a powerful man. And I thought very early on, he laid down a marker. You're not coming in here. And, you know, when he was getting that ball, he was bursting out. He was a powerful man the way he can do it. It's a good job I'm not a selector, because I wouldn't have had John Conlon centre back, and I certainly wouldn't have Páraic Fitzpatrick wing back. But both of them have proved me wrong, 100%. Like Páraic, I didn't think Páraic would be wing back. But while he was on and he picked up an injury, his work rate, his hard hitting, you know, he really... You know, I have to say that about the man. He really stood up. So I suppose the lads can see this in training as well. Like,
yeah.
But Waterford have a lot to do. Now, you have to see for Waterford that they lost Conor Prunty and they lost Jamie Barron before the match, and you know the likes of Burka gone and O'Keefe got all the goals. You know, I think they lost their vice captain and captain from last year, and their vice captain and captain from this year. So you know, that's a fair loss to any team, like. Yeah. But still, I think they got their tactics wrong. I think, you know, and they didn't change it up, and they didn't seem to be able to change it up either. Kevin Moran has huge mileage. He's around a long time, and I think the heat that Tony Kelly was talking about, I was talking after the game about the heat was there down at pitch level, and I think Kevin Moran has struggled a bit. You know, Austin Gleeson kept him in the game. You know, he scored 5 points. You know, that was their strong points. But you know, their full backline, Desi Hutchison was much vaunted. Shane Bennett, Jake Prendergast, they left the field without scoring. You know, and that's a testimony to Conor Cleary, to Rory Hayes and Paul Flanagan. Conor Cleary doesn't get the praise I feel he deserves as a fullback. He never lets us down. He gives away a couple of frees, but most fullbacks do. But he has held the best of them, like, and you know, I think huge credit again on Sunday for the way they did that. And I have a colleague who came up with Will the save there at a vital time to indeed we put it up for 65. You know, if Waterford popped a goal, then they would have been in trouble. Like, overall, I mean, you heard what Ian Cahill said. Waterford didn't turn up, and I don't think they really didn't turn up, and they're struggling now to get back in. You know, to get back into the championship later on.
In terms then, Darach, of key areas for Clare to improve, Nicholas has mentioned the white count was very high. Would you say that's the main area to improve? And obviously their back line is going to be tested a bit more against a very strong tip forward. Like.
Yeah, well, I think like Waterford were so bad that and we only won by 3 or 4 points, that there are actually more areas to improve on than you might think. Like, I think scoring efficiency or shot taking has to improve, and usually that would, with a game under your belt coming in against Tip who haven't played a game, usually the game played would stand to you, and you'd be much more efficient. But I felt there was a lot of selfish play at times where we were taking shots with a high degree of difficulty when there was a man free 10 yards, 15 yards back who could have easily popped it over. And that'd be something that they could highlight, I'm sure, in their video analysis and correct this week. The other thing was the discipline, and Nicholas has touched on it there. We did concede an awful lot of frees, and actually they had a bad day on the frees in terms of their shooting. And even though we dominated the game completely for 3 of the 4 quarters, if they had scored all their frees, I'd say it might have been much closer. They might have even pipped it. So to be dominating that much and to keep a team in it through real discipline is fine when the opposition just has a really off day like they did the other day. But if they're playing well at all, you know, it'll catch you. So I think discipline and their shooting and their scoring efficiency. But the other thing, I suppose, and this would be, I'm not convinced on this, but it'd be in the last quarter, Waterford did start to get on top, and they did start to get that running game going. And I wonder whether our fitness was lagging or whether we needed more of an impact from the bench, and maybe we could have introduced lads a bit earlier, because they certainly got on top of the last while, and with only a week of a turnaround to the Tip game, you'd be hoping that we can be fresh and energetic coming into it. But hopefully there won't be any tired legs, and if there is, we'll need more of an impact, I think, from our bench, just to see us over the line in that last quarter.
Okay. And Nicholas, then to turn to yourself, looking ahead to Sunday, heading for the Gaelic grounds, Clare Tip, what way do you see it going?
Yeah, it's coming up fairly fast now. You know, the game Sunday would have taken that out of Clare, I think. Like, but on the other hand, it's obviously going to stand ahead that game and tidy up, especially with as Darach alluded to there, like, you know, the shooting and the finding the right man in the right position. There was a few times, as Darach said, where there was a right man in the right position, but he didn't get the pass. And you know, on another day we might have had Aaron Shannon might have had 3 goals. You know, but you know, that last one would have completely sealed the game. He was unfortunate. If he got the ball today, we think it would have been a goal, and we wouldn't be talking like this. But those are the fine things that you have to look out for. But looking ahead to Tipperary, like Tipperary had a very indifferent league, and you know, you couldn't really go by league form, because I mean the league seemed to matter to anybody. They were trying all sorts of stuff. Like, and the worst game I saw this year was Cork and Tip in the league. It was one of the worst games, you know, and nobody really went for it. I suppose it ended up in a draw, and everybody was happy. But the question mark over Tipperary is they have a lot of mileage on the track, and you know, the likes of Brendan Maher, Páraic Maher, you know, Bubbles Dwyer, John McGrath, they have a lot of hurling done. No McGrath, all those types have a lot of hurling done. No, I'm sure they still have a lot to offer. But if we get a hot day in the Gaelic grounds, you know, I think we'd have the legs for them, and there's where the game might be won. For Clare, it's going to be a whole different game to the Waterford game. You know, the chip forwards. You know, if Shane McCallan, nobody knows what kind of form he's in. He hasn't really featured, I think, only in one game in the league. And what kind of form is he in? What sort of form is Bubbles Dwyer? Hasn't seen much time either. Is he going to be on? And John McGrath. We know what they can do. Jason Ford is in flying form. Obviously, Jake Morris. You know, they have the forwards to win any game if they hit the right game. We'd expect a big game from our defence, and there's where it could be won and lost. If our defence can stand up the way they did last Sunday and keep those household names now, if they can keep them quiet, I think we'll have a great chance. Nobody really knows where Tipperary is. Nobody knew where Clare were at. You know, the only indicator we had was how well they played against Kilkenny. We got a big impact in the Kilkenny game off the bench. We didn't get that really last Sunday. I don't want to be too critical about anyone, but we didn't seem to get that same bounce last Sunday. But hopefully, you know, it's a 20-man game now, and we have the lads come on. You know, but maybe come on a bit earlier. I don't know. But Tip, by all means, they're down in Fort Island. I think training at the moment. Liam Sheely is going to put out all the stops. And Liam Sheely, he's just over there in Bordeaux looking across at us. And he certainly doesn't want to be beaten by Clare. And, you know, it's a game he'll have them up for, you know. But Brian Lohan equally will have our lads up. And Brian Lohan, in his playing days, loved to put off Tipperary, like, and as a manager, no, he will as well. And the lads will have their own work to him. James Moore, you know, it's a great one of men, Kinbad and Sean Tracy. They'll be trying to spot the weaknesses in Tipperary, and maybe it could be speed. It could be down to that. You know, so I give Clare a great chance.
Perfect. And Darach, just two questions to yourself. First of all, do you see any changes potentially to the Clare team? And then secondly, what's the famous match verdict?
Yeah, I think in terms of changes, probably not. Davy Mack would be the only one I would see coming in, and it's hard to know where he'll come in, but he might come into that half-back line. I think, you know, if Davy Mack is fully fit, for me, he'd be one of the first people on the team sheet. Such as quality, I think he'd add a huge amount if he was able to start the game. So he might be the only change. Well, I'll be hoping that he'll be in anyway. In terms of the verdict, I think we have a great chance going into it. You know, provided we recover well during the week and we are fresh come game time. I think that having played the game and being able to identify, you know, a couple of areas where we can make definite improvements. If we make those improvements, I think we should be very confident going into this game. Tip will pose a very different threat, I think, than what Waterford did. They would have a more traditional style, particularly in their forwards. You know, the Waterford half-forward line probably went missing, whereas Tip will probably hold their structure a bit more, and they won't look at running the ball out from defence and from half-back. They'll look at delivering a quality ball in, and holding that half-forward line and winning that half-forward line. So it'll pose a very different threat, particularly for the lads in the half-back line who had a great game the last day, and it'll be interesting to see how they adapt. Probably Nicholas touched on it there. One of their weaknesses would be pace, and if we can get a run on them from the lads we've outlined earlier, like the Ian Galvin, Colm Galvin, Ryan Taylor, who all have a lot of pace, we could make hay. But I think similarly they might be saying the same about our our own defence and whether they can run at us and test us that way. So should make for a great game. And you know, it's only just a shame that we can't all go in and watch it, and that there wouldn't be a big crowd there, because the atmosphere would be electric. I think with two old enemies going to war again. So looking forward to it now. But I do think that we have a really good chance that if I was forced, I'd have to pick Clare to win it.
Yeah, very positive to hear that. And we'll of course be back next week looking back on Clare v Tip and hopefully a positive outcome. And thanks very much to Darach and to Nicholas for joining us. We hope relations will still be as cordial between the two men following Kilmona and Clonlara's clash later on in this year's Cup Championship. So thanks very much to the two lads, and we'll have more insight and analysis in Thursday's Clare.
Cheers, lads.
Thanks, Wayne.